Boys and girls, how's it all going? Very excited for this one. If you want to watch us on your big smart TV on the wall on YouTube, or you can't get onto Facebook, or you know someone that wants to watch that isn't on Facebook, there's the YouTube link for you. Has that come through? Yeah, there you go. That's a bit of housekeeping done. We're back for another masterclass. We'll call it a masterclass. We've got Giles Campbell Longley in the background from the Motus Projects and various other projects. Giles is a parkour and free running filmmaker who kind of came onto my radar maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I came across the parkour scene through their YouTube videos. They're kind of if anyone's kind of seen any of them, you'll know what I mean with the sense of kind of camaraderie and kind of the trips that they go on all look incredible, and it's very easy to kind of fall in love with that scene and that vibe of video. So yeah, that was kind of my journey into it. Started a few years ago, and then in the last sort of year or so, I've just started poking at the scene a little bit and trying to get myself involved with it. And Giles and I have had a kind of ongoing conversation now for the last few months or so, I guess. And since we started this, I thought, yeah, Giles would be a really interesting guy to get on. He's definitely got some good insights, been on some mad trips, done some pretty impressive things, made some incredible films. So I'll give him a little message to see if he was interested, and lucky for you guys, he was. So yeah, I'm really pleased to have him here. Let's bring him on, ladies and gentlemen. In fact, if you're watching, let us know in the comments, because it'd be good to hear from you. And if you're watching, do a few little of these emojis and stuff, and we'll bring on Giles Campbell Longley, everybody.
Oh, there I am.
There you are. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. I'm in my office, which is a bit of a sweatbox because it's at the top of my house, and it's just kind of as the sun heats up the house, all the heat just rises. So yeah. I'm warm, but
yeah, I'm warm. It's been warm literally since lockdown, hasn't it? It's kind of the weather's almost taking the mick out of us.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a garden, so it's like it's actually been quite nice because it's been a good excuse to just sit in the garden and chill. I think I feel like if it was pissing down outside, it would just feel miserable.
Yeah,
you can go outside and look up at the sky with no planes in it and no clouds, and just be like, oh, at least like nature's okay.
Yeah, definitely. This is a big thing we've been talking about quite a lot on the show, is that nature seems to be kind of having a break from all the shit that we throw at it, and seeing some incredible stories of kind of like water flowing clear in Venice and
the Himalayas in India. I saw, like, for the first time in like 30 years, some cities can see the Himalayas and stuff. There's like a generation of people would have grown up and not been able to see mountains from their home, and now they're like, oh, there they are.
Yeah,
it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's I think there's definitely some good ecological changes that are happening. And I mean that's kind of just the nature side of it. I think the kind of more human side of that story, you got things like us kind of doing this, I suppose, but there's various versions of this type of thing popping up. I'm just seeing people kind of connecting kind of more than ever, I suppose, by necessity. People are kind of speaking online more than ever, but during those conversations there's some kind of other interesting conversations that come up off the back of it. So
yeah, for sure. Time. And I think the other thing I've seen a lot of is, like, I mean, I can never say that I've been a huge supporter of it. No, I've been a supporter of it, but I can't say that I've actioned it. But the whole kind of shopping locally thing, like, now you don't really have an option, in the sense that kind of we've got this like town Facebook page that I'm a part of, and we found on there, like, all of our shopping at the moment for the last 2 weeks has come from a company that normally services restaurants. So normally they obviously have like a warehouse, and they get in all the food, and then every day they're delivering to restaurants who actually normally are cooking meals for people, but all the restaurants are closed. So they've carried on their service, but they're selling all their food online and doing deliveries to homes instead. So we even had to go to the shops once. Like, the only time I've gone to the shops is just for like little extra bits that we've forgotten. But we're getting like discounted food from a local place, and it's way, like, I mean, the onions are literally this big. Like, it's way better quality. So and things like this, we're like, well, if they continue this service after things cool down, then like, why wouldn't we still use it?
Yeah, definitely. It's like you say, that kind of that shift towards, I mean, those guys opening themselves up for residential deliveries. It's kind of, you see
Yeah.
businesses are kind of changing, and then kind of people at home are changing their habits as well. But it all seems to be in a positive way. I think one of the things that we've definitely been kind of talking about on here as well is kind of this, we're sort of hoping that this is lasting change, instead of it just being kind of everybody sort of falls into like perfect little society for this time. It's
I
kind of
really
like,
don't know, like, especially some of the environmental things, you really hope it's going to be lasting. And then you just think about the sort of, it's all going to come down to the money, isn't it? Like, if it's still cheaper to go back to a lot of the bad things,
yeah,
which is depressing, but we'll see.
it's kind of like I want the ecological side for it to stick around, but I also feel like I need a holiday off the back of this, so I'm just contributing to it. So
Yeah.
it's a difficult one, but yeah, no, I think the at the very least, this won't be forgotten. This won't just be something that happened once upon a time that we will just kind of crack on with our
No,
lives
I
again.
think this will be our kind of telling the kids about this period. As much as it's really, I mean, people are like, oh, it's like the war. It's not. It's incredibly comfortable, but it's definitely the biggest shift that we've all had. So
yeah, definitely. Back in my day, back in the Corona day, you don't know what it was
yeah,
like.
sat at
Couldn't
home
get
for
bog roll.
3 months.
Yeah, no, it's not too bad. Obviously, we're always careful on the show to kind of not undermine. It's a tragic time. People are losing people and everything, but equally,
Yes.
it's kind of, I think it's just one extreme. It's more extreme both sides, isn't it? There's more kind of tragedy and death going on, but then
Yeah.
equally on the other side of that, there's new opportunities like popping up, kind of new projects coming together, and yeah, I think it's as much as that side of it, the negative side is happening. Of course, there's some amazing things happening over on this side of it. So
Yeah, very true.
Interesting time. All right, let's introduce the people to you and tell us a little bit about what you do, where you've come from, kind of where you're at the moment.
Well, where do you want to start? I guess.
I reckon we go right back to the beginning. So, I think I said sort of in the intro. Obviously, is that right to call you a parkour and free running filmmaker? That's basically
kind of, yeah. I mean, I don't really do, aside from like motor stuff now and personal things, I don't really do commercial jobs anymore. Unless the right one comes along at the right time. But I think it's either filmmaker or brand owner. But I definitely made my name in the filmmaker sort of circle, if you know what I mean. Like that's how I made my name in parkour, is as a filmmaker. So
yeah, okay, cool. So if we go right back to the start of the journey, when did you first start training parkour?
Sometime 2003, basically after Jump London, which was the original kind of Channel 4 documentary about parkour. I saw that very quickly. I had a friend at school who kind of got obsessed with it, and we both got into it. And I mean, it was not even close to what parkour is nowadays. It was just kind of, it was so simplistic, but I got hooked and was training around sort of my hometown, and my family had just picked up we'd never had a video camera when I was a kid, but they picked up a handy cam to sort of shoot. I think we were going to Florida the next year or something. So we got that as like a holiday camera, and I basically adopted it and was using it to make all my little training videos. And yeah, then I did my first trip to London. There was like this jam happening, and my dad took me and my mate up. This is sort of like really early days, and we went up because we knew London was the place to go from the forums. So my dad took us up. First thing we see is a guy just like slice his shin open, and my dad still tells me about it. I remember he apparently was just standing there and just being like, what am I doing? Like, why have I taken my 13-year-old child to London? And but no, I loved it, and then was just hooked. And I used to go up to London like every weekend because there was no scene around here. And my mate who I started training with dropped out pretty quickly because he did athletics and kind of wanted to preserve himself for that. So we just go out with my dad or my mum and just train with all these like older guys and sort of random people. And slowly that scene grew, and I made more and more connections, and I kept making these like terrible videos, but I mean they were videos. And yeah, that went on basically through my entire sort of whatever secondary school is, like through that entire time. And I was just the parkour kid, and there were people at school who'd be like, do a backflip, and no one else really at my school really got into it. Like there were a few other guys who'd try it out occasionally, but it was just my obsession. And I had like my dad built me some stuff in the garden. I'd like train on that, had a trampoline and things, and it was just for the entirety of school, it was like my thing. And by the time I got to the end of school, I was like, well, it's the only thing I like doing, like this and making videos. So I kind of, to lead on to what I assume is kind of the next question of how I got into filming, was just like, I'd already nurtured this joy of filming, but I wasn't obsessed. I wasn't one of these people who was like, sort of, oh, I picked up a camera age 3 and filmed videos every day or something. Like, all I liked doing was training parkour and filming parkour and being in that community. So when I came to the end of school, I was just like, well, it's kind of the only thing I want to do. So I've got to make it work in a way. And yeah, after a bit of flopping about, trying to decide whether I wanted to do a gap year and go snowboarding and things, which I eventually didn't do, I basically was like, well, I'm just going to try and make a living as a parkour filmmaker, which was ridiculous. And I'm not sure why my parents supported it, but apparently they did. So
yeah, I guess at the time, the community, the scene wasn't anywhere near what it is now either. So sort of financially, that was a bit of a gamble, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, realistically, like I was 18, 19. The scene had grown a decent amount around that time because, like, I mean, 2009, like the Barclaycard World Freerun Championships had happened, which was in the middle of Trafalgar Square. So there was some big stuff. Like, this was almost, and there was the kind of Casino Royale hype and things like that.
Yeah.
So it almost felt like it was massive around that time. So I think there was a bit to sort of when you're explaining it to someone like that, a lot of people had heard about parkour and free running around that time. So if I was trying to convince my parents, I guess there was kind of all of that was in the air. And also I was young, so I mean, my parents have always been incredibly supportive, so I could essentially make those mistakes. Like me trying to be a filmmaker is a lot cheaper than me trying to go to university and getting loads of debt, which I wasn't doing. So yeah, in some ways, I guess my parents were like, yeah, cool, go for it.
Yeah, definitely. I guess you can afford to be a bit more, to try different things around that sort of age. And
yeah, and
I guess, like you say as well, with obviously, if the scene felt like it was something that was happening at the time, it was probably a good time to get involved with it. Well, clearly it was, because kind of now where it's kind of taken you. But I think feeling that kind of initial kind of surge around those days and kind of feeling like there's a wave there that could be ridden. I think maybe saying that you've ridden the wave is unfair though. I think you've very much been kind of part of the wave, haven't you? You've kind of,
but it's like there's definitely a huge factor of it's timing and luck, because now somebody's saying, oh, I want to be a parkour filmmaker, like it's a completely different place. In some ways it's a better place, but also there's a lot less novelty to it. Like I happen to get on board sort of right and establish myself as a filmmaker right as the commercial opportunities for filmmaking started to pick up. So a lot of my early work was just like people, sort of Storm Freerun and teams like this needed that, like clients came to them and said, we want you guys to jump around London in suits and make a viral for our accountancy company and things. And they'd go, cool, well, this guy shoots parkour professionally. And they're like, oh, well, he's clearly the guy to employ. So I got a lot of work like that nowadays doesn't really exist, because those opportunities, like that ship's already sailed. Like people are not like, oh, we need a viral parkour. Like it's not it's I think it's kind of a flash in a bottle kind of thing. Like now parkour it still goes viral, but it was more of a novelty back then.
Yeah, okay. I guess if it's kind of culturally like relevant and kind of popping at that time, then people want to cash in on it. But then I guess maybe that's a good thing to say that now parkour, because it's not as novel anymore, it's established, right?
I'm much happier with where it is now, for sure.
I guess it's nice not to be the one that is thought of when somebody needs a novel video. It's kind of like, it kind of suggests that there's a stability in the scene and in the sport now.
Yeah, like the amount of times we've basically shot the same video with different costumes or suits or props around South Bank, with so much running to fill time. Like the amount of times I've just run with a glide cam around South Bank following different athletes for a different client is insane. Just through that couple of years. And yeah, I'm glad we're kind of past that now.
Yeah, I guess like being past that allows you to then focus in on what is your art, isn't it? Mean if you're not having to do so much client work to kind of pay the bills, and you're finding your own thing to be able to kind of to do that with. I guess that shows the success of the sport as a kind of wider community, but equally kind of your journey through it. I think you seem now at the moment to be allowed to just focus on the things that you're doing and not necessarily have to do so much commercial work.
I think it's more because I'm stubborn, and I mean it really is. Like I'm to be completely honest, I still, and I've said this so many times in different mediums, like I barely earn any money. Like parkour is not some lucrative thing. Like it can be, but I'm still yet to feel it's sort of successful. I mean, I feel like I'm in a great position within the community, so I should be doing way more commercial work. But I know which path I'm on, I know which path I want to stay on, and I know what makes me happy. And like I actively literally was like, I'm not doing commercial work unless it's the right thing, because I love making videos, but I like making my videos. I'm not a good, I think I'm a decent, like, okay filmmaker. And when I'm passionate, I can do good things. But all these client videos where we're running around South Bank, I'm sure there are far better filmmakers who could have taken the concept and turned it into something much better rather than something more formulaic like I was. And I didn't enjoy that kind of stuff because I just don't find enjoyment in it. I don't think I'm that great at it. And it's a stubborn thing to do. And it's sort of, I'm lucky because I'm just in the right circumstance where I can be a bit stubborn. I mean, like it's straight up like Sarah, who's, I keep saying girlfriend, but technically she's now my fiance, isn't she? But like is incredibly supportive, and it's just one of those cases where like she understands the path that I'm on as well, and she can see the company growing and things. So it's kind of, yeah, I'm just taking that time to build this thing to that point. Whereas if I wasn't with Sarah, and if I sort of wasn't in that circumstance, I'd probably have to be having a second job or whatever. Basically, I got a sugar mummy or whatever. I mean, no, but she just supports me.
Yeah, that's cool. So that kind of journey that you just described, then when was the point where you started thinking, okay, this is what I'm going to do out of it? Obviously there was the flow stuff in the early days, and was that kind of something that made you think, okay, I'm going to create a brand, I'm going to turn this into a company? Kind of that transition, I suppose, from being a freelance filmmaker into going, right, this is what I want to do and I'm going to commit to it.
So that the brand came quite a lot later, actually. Like I was kind of, so we started filmmaking and started doing client jobs, and I was doing a lot of work with Tim Sheaf, who then kind of blew up himself. That linked us onto the flow stuff. We did a year of that. I loved all of that. Like that was the stuff I loved, because the flow stuff was fairly, we had a bit of a script to stick to in terms of what we were allowed to create, but that was passionate, and I was traveling and I was with the right people and all of these things. It was almost after that period that there was a lot more commercial work because the flow stuff dried up, so we had to hunt for more work. Then from that point I was then hunting for non-parkour based work, because at the end of the day I was working as a filmmaker, shot a lot of cycling videos for bands and theater shows and random, like, I don't know, your general filmmaking freelance work. But at the same time I was still trying to like pursue this thing of always, all I want to do is just be connected to parkour, and I want to help parkour, and I want to be able to sort of sit on my deathbed, lie on my deathbed, whatever, and just feel like I was in some part of taking the sport from here to here, if you know what I mean. And whatever medium I'm chasing to do that is kind of, I'm happy, if you know what I mean. Like in 10 years time, I don't know, I might not be doing the brand anymore. I might be owning 10 gyms or running events or whatever. Like, I mean, at the moment, I love the brand and I can't see why it would ever end. But as long as I'm connected to the sport and within the sport, then that's kind of where I want to be. And yeah, I started to take a bit of an interest in like fashion, so to speak, and just the community shifted away from everyone dressing like hobos, and people started putting a bit more focus. Frang and Storm and stuff put more emphasis on clothing, and I was kind of just like, well, why what's stopping me doing that myself? Like, I don't have a team necessarily, but I was like, I want to do it. And I was like, well, I know the right people. I know good athletes. Like, I can see how I could make it work. And I started it. Initially, I wanted to be anonymous. Like, I was like, I'm going to start this thing and do it completely anonymously. But that failed immediately. And then I just kind of started up as almost, I guess, like a side hustle. And then, as you will know, running a business takes a lot. Then kind of it just slowly started to become more and more and more. And I don't know. Like, I probably could have juggled two things at once for longer, but it's when you're on a cycling job in Italy and you're there for sort of 48 hours and you've flown in at 3 a.m. and I don't know, you get up at 5 a.m. and you go out shooting and then you come back for a little break. And in that time, I mean, this is a literal story, like you're measuring and taking photos of bag samples and sending them to the factory in China and stuff. And it's just, and I'm like, well, I enjoy this and I can see where I want to go with this. And I'm not enjoying this filming stuff. So I started to feel like I wanted to make a decision. And it wasn't like an immediate thing. It was kind of over the course of a year. I was just like, I know which one I want to be pursuing more and more. I kind of rushed that there because I didn't actually explain like when I started the brand, I guess. But it was, starting the brand, it was just that, like, I'm going to start this thing as a bit of a side hustle. And I gave out some t-shirts for free. And then it grew quite quickly because I kind of got the shirts on the right people's backs. And it was just as I did the Off the Edge tour with Corey and Jesse. So I had this logo. I mean, literally just made some basic logo t-shirts and I just got them. I mean, I guess it's just putting them on influencers, isn't it? Like, I just got them on the right people's backs and things started to pop off and you create your social media channels. And I had a sort of ethos of what I wanted the brand to represent. And I guess that resonated with people. And I think because I'd already built my name up as a filmmaker a bit, I already had personal support. So yeah, kind of
nice.
So
you discover parkour at a young age. You're a bit of an athlete yourself for a while. Then you're filming parkour. You're filming, and then you start filming parkour for kind of bigger and better things. Then you're kind of at the point where the Motus Projects has started, and then that's kind of the start of a whole nother journey, right?
Yeah.
So the first trip, I guess, that I know of that you guys did was the big France trip, where the guys are literally kids in it. They look like babies in it.
Origins, yes.
Elise? Yeah. So that was that the first trip that you guys did as a team, as a brand?
Yeah. So the brand initially didn't have any athletes. I kind of, in my head, I was like, I don't want to sponsor athletes until I can pay them a wage. And then fairly quickly realized that the prospect of paying people wages was fairly distant in the future, but the need of sponsored athletes, people to represent the brand, was fairly urgent. And I didn't, as much as I'm connected to a load of, I'm incredibly grateful because some of my closest friends are some of the best parkour athletes in the world. But a lot of them are already associated with teams, and those that weren't are kind of similar to my age, a little bit younger and things. But I was like, I'd rather support those on the come up. Like, I want to find those young gems and give them that ladder. One of them, Keelan, lives fairly close to me, and we used to train at the same gymnastics gym. And he was kind of always my immediate choice of a guy I'd sponsor if I were to. So I picked up him and a couple of other guys, and then sort of later that was around New Year's. And then I was like, well, we've got this Origins collection that I'd already started working on. And I was like, well, and that the whole conceptual idea of that, all of the products were based around ideas, sort of areas of lease and all these, I was very into the intricate details, which actually then, when working with a Chinese factory and broken English emails, half of them didn't actually come through. But they're literally ridiculous stuff. Like, there was a panel on the shorts that was angled to look like it was a 45-degree angle to reflect the staircases that you find around Lease, where loads of famous stuff has happened, that are 45-degree staircases and all this stupid, it's not stupid stuff, but stuff that I really wanted to put into the clothing that probably costs loads more money to sort of put these details in that most people don't even pay attention to. So I was like, well, the lookbook and the video has to be shot in Leith, and the guys had never been to Leith. I'd been there a couple of times, so it's you can jump in the car and be there in a few hours. So we drove down there, and they just killed it. Like the guys, when they're on a video project like that, I mean, we've developed this and realized it now. But you take them out training, they're going to do impressive stuff. But there's like a video mode, and they just go, oh, cool. Normally I go like this. I'm going to go like this. And we just spent a week in Leith and went out every day and got as many clips as we could, but like focused on like high quality stuff. And these young guys who a lot of the world hadn't really paid attention to before yet just demolished it. Because it was Leith, it was the place where all the original stuff had happened. So we took a lot of like classic movements and either leveled up them or sort of copied them and added extra bits and things like this. And it went down like really, really well in the community. So it's sorry, Karen.
For anyone that doesn't know, is kind of not aware of the sport and the community and the scene. Obviously, the reason that you chose Leith for that first video is kind of considered the home of parkour, right? It's kind of
So it's where David and Sebastian essentially grew up. David actually still lived there, I think, for up until fairly recently. Seb now lives in London. But yeah, it's the origin of parkour. So it's sort of undeniably like it's where all the early videos came from. And it's like a weird magical place, very kind of classic.
Yeah. So I guess that's one thing that people, I guess, don't realize is that I mean it's classified as a sport now, right? But it came from kind of people essentially kind of jumping about in their hometown and then kind of sharing the idea of it. You kind of got the old kind of view on it of the tracer type of thing, and it's kind of it was almost philosophical to start off with, right, before it became a sport.
Yeah, there's a few different like ideas about. I'm not the biggest like the classic story is David Bell's father was in the Falklands War, one of the kind of wars. But I mean, they took the army style method of like, oh, you're getting shot at, run away, and you don't want to go around something, you want to jump over something. So he kind of took that inspiration from his dad and turned it into like a childhood game of just running around and climbing on the school roof and things, which is amazing because you can go to Leith and climb on the school roof, and it's like there were kids sort of 20, 25, Jesus, almost, yeah, I guess like 25 years ago, who essentially started this entire thing by just doing this. And it developed from there. And they had some of the guys in sort of David and some of the Yamakaze were very philosophical and did stuff 1,000 times to make their bodies strong. And they all had these like methods of training, and it's definitely changed and gone in different sort of waves and moved in different directions in those sort of that first decade of some of the guys who wanted to take it to the movies and other guys who wanted to just keep it theirs and things. And eventually, I guess the bubble grew, and then it was really like it stayed in France and really wasn't getting that much sort of media attention for a good while. And then there was a Ripley's Believe It or Not feature that got aired, I think predominantly in America, but it wasn't like a big thing, but a few people saw it. But the big one was then Mike Christie, who was the director of Jump London, saw this thing and basically was like, let's make something of it. And that was like the pebble being thrown into the pond. And that's what got me into it. And then came The Rock, which was Jump Britain, because due to Jump London's success, Jump Britain then had, I guess, like a lot more media support, and I think they got it on a lot more channels and stuff, and that just like global like the craziest thing, the weekend after Jump Britain had aired, like the normal London sessions were maybe like 10 to 20 people max. Like that was a big session if like 10 to 20 people were in London. The weekend after Jump Britain, it was fucking crazy. Like the amount of people who just turned up at South Bank, like, which is amazing really, because you'd think if I saw something on TV, I wouldn't necessarily think like, I'm doing that now, I'm going there now. But I think because Jump Britain finished with that end sequence where like it showed all the local, not the local, but it showed like loads of kind kind of a load of the athletes who weren't in Jump Britain, but it was like, oh, look how far this is spread, like it's all around England. I think everyone was like, oh, this is a thing, like I want to go do this. So
definitely. I think those early days that were kind of, as commenting from Owen there, saying original YouTube parkour days there, I think that was my only exposure to parkour prior to kind of where I'm at now with it, this round of it, if you like. But I saw Jump London, saw Jump Britain, kind of saw the initial kind of bubble, saw it kind of happen. And then kind of it just fell off my radar again, and I didn't discover it again until I guess a few years later. And obviously Motus was a big part of the videos that I started discovering, obviously Stora as well, kind of that. And I think one thing that was different from the early days to in terms of like Jump Britain versus the YouTube stuff is when you watch the YouTube stuff, you've got the bit that for me personally was the bit that got me. You got the trips, exactly. And I think that's definitely worth talking about, because everyone that I've kind of introduced to the sport and kind of shown them videos, that's what they reflect back to me and say, I would love to go on a trip like that. I would love to kind of and I think that's the thing now that is growing the sport. Obviously the movement's incredible and the sport itself is incredible, but the culture around the sport now is that's what makes me kind of dress like this these days. And
and I think you can't rush that, and you can't fake it as well. Like it needed that time to develop, and obviously there was a culture prior to that, but it was not your focus on displaying it because the sport was so new and the physical feats were so they were new, that I guess for so long the videos were just like, oh my god, look at this parkour, like look at this jump, look at this. And then as it became established, and I think that's why there was that spike, because it sort of around 2009, people like yourself everyone was aware of it. And now you meet people and they're like, oh, you do that parkour thing, I thought that was an internet fad. But I mean, you don't hear that so much. Maybe a year or two, like 2 years ago, you'd heard that quite a lot. Now I think we've become re-established again. Like it almost popped very early because it was physically impressive. Then it went back to almost being a bit underground, and the culture then needed to like develop and grow, and these teams were sort of created and different video styles and stuff like this. And it's slowly bubbled away, and now it's just this like undeniable presence that has its own sort of fashion sense. It has its own style of content creation, and all of these things. Like,
and I think that one of the major things that got me was those examples that you just highlighted, kind of the fashion, the style of kind of the videos that get made, just the culture of it, the style of it altogether tends to be pretty fucking high quality, right? Like some of the videos that have been made, obviously. I mean, picking out random examples, one that you were involved with, like Roof Culture Asia, like that's a feature length self-shot like movie, like by some dudes who just decided to just go to Asia and just go and shoot it themselves. It's like, I think that's one thing that I find like fascinating about the whole thing, is that a lot of these projects, they're not being funded by kind of external sources. It's just a bunch of mates like getting a load of camera equipment together, putting a plan together and making it happen, and it comes out it as incredible content.
I think because parkour and YouTube have literally grown side by side. Like what was YouTube, 2005, 2006, which is obviously around about the same time as Jump Britain. So everyone who was kind of training after Jump Britain had somewhere to upload to. Before then, it was all kind of you send it and all these things and forums and stuff. And therefore, as YouTube progressed, and then you had the sort of the DSLRs came in, which was like the early Canon 550Ds and things. You had these people like, I mean, Toby and Sasha are just, they're obviously from Stora, are the two guys who have just ridden the YouTube filmmaking wave, and they've progressed alongside it. And you can almost think of their filming skill, like you look at the oldest version of YouTube, like really rough, that was them at the start. Now you look at YouTube and how it runs as a platform, and it's like polished and smooth and professional, and it's like they have just progressed at that same rate alongside that. So the stuff that they put out is just, it's just gone like that. It's sick. Like, it's so sick.
Yeah, it's an interesting way to look at it. I guess like you say, parkour and YouTube have kind of, they've grown up together. It's
accelerated the sport massively. Like parkour, if we were in the VHS days of skateboarding and stuff like this, it would be, I mean, it'd take decades. Because skateboarding it took so much longer. like
Yeah.
magazine, because how else would you see somebody on the other side of the world? Like, oh, a magazine, which is a photo, or a VHS tape, which has taken a month for you to get. And now it's like, boom, like we can see Dom in Australia doing something ridiculous, and then a kid in London goes out and tries it because now he knows it's possible.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's,
And in that respect, then, like you say, the sport just booms because
Yeah.
of the connection that we can kind of send videos across the globe just instantly, and I think, yeah, Josh had just had a comment in down below saying like the tour vibe in the videos is like super cathartic. It's kind of, you get that kind of camaraderie thing. I think that, like I said earlier, the difference between kind of original kind of YouTube content when it was more kind of the French kind of philosophical side of it, where kind of, I guess, where the UK then kind of took that thing and just went like, this is our lads on tour version of it, our kind of British version of it.
Yeah.
That for me was, that's it when I found the sport originally, again, the movement is there and the movement's incredible, but it's that side of it that kind of got me. That kind of, that camaraderie, that thing of kind of, as you and I have discussed before, I used to play in a band back in the day, and it kind of gave me that hit of like, wow, it's just a load of lads jumping in a van together and just going off on an adventure. And I think obviously that's kind of, it's still there in the sport now, but I think early days, chaps on tour type days, that was kind of, that seemed to be that was the new thing at the time, was let's get up on a mountain, put our hands out in the air and kind of shout "We're at the sunset" type thing. And I think that, like, at the time that was cool, and it was like that was kind of a big part of the sport and the sport's growth was that vibe, that kind of lads on tour type thing.
Yeah.
How much now do you kind of honor that, and how much more now is the movement allowed to kind of shine in and of itself? Because it felt like maybe around that time you can get away with just showing a journey onto some mad island or something, whereas now I feel like the movement itself is, obviously the movement has progressed as well. So
so it's weird because obviously you're referencing a lot of Stora there, who they're kind of an interesting one because they've done things like that where they'll make these videos that may not, like, elements of the videos may not contain a huge amount of movement, and there's a lot of kind of like, like woo and all of this. And it would be very easy to be like, oh, they're just making pretty videos that aren't physically impressive. Because for me, the movement at the end of the day, the whole reason we're in this is because of parkour, which is the movement. So the movement is incredibly important. But then Stora do that, but then also they're some of the best athletes in the world. Like, so it's they've struck that incredible balance. And yeah, to go back to that, like, for me, the movement will always be number one. I've definitely played into the travel videos in the past and stuff like this, and we've done a lot of tours and trips, and I think whatever you show nowadays, it has to be real, because you can smell fakery. Like, and obviously, I mean, people watch the videos and they're like, oh, your life's so good or whatever, and you just, for the most part, you just show the best bits. There's a lot of shit parts, but also nowadays it's also good to show those bad parts, because I think just being as transparent on the internet is the most important thing. And what I'm now like obsessed with is really showing every element of the movement, like the struggle going into it, because it used to just be very short run up, massive gap, end. And now I think the beauty in it is that our audience is now big enough that there's enough people who want to watch that mental battle. They want to watch the build up. They want to watch the attempts. They want to watch the success afterwards. And there's like more people who appreciate that as a whole, rather than just like glossy show reels.
Yeah, definitely. I think Spitting in the Wind's a good example of that. So for people that don't know that, and I would encourage people to go and check that out. That's the Motus Projects kind of longest video, I guess. If you put it all together as one, it's long, isn't it?
We were meant to release that as the initial plan was to do that as a full length piece, and then we kind of last minute were like, let's just see him run it episodic, and it worked. It worked so well that like our next big project will almost certainly be episodic.
Yeah, nice. Well, what I was going to touch on with that is obviously that's your big America trip. It's kind of
it's Jim Carrey.
Yeah. For anyone that's seen it, they'll get the reference with the Jim Carrey haircut. Yeah. For anyone that hasn't seen it, it's essentially what we were talking about earlier. A bunch of guys jump in a van, jump on an airplane, go over to America, and go, let's go and make a video. I guess you had a loose plan in place of kind of the states and stuff that you wanted to hit, but it was literally that, wasn't it? It was kind of, let's go over there and just make content and see what we come out with at the end of it.
Yeah, it was actually quite a strict plan of like where we like. I mean, I had it mapped out because we wanted to be at certain gyms on certain days, and we had to book that with the gyms. It meant like it actually kind of, once you started saying, well, we've got to be here at that date, this date, and here at that date, and we're driving like 1,000 miles in between some of them. It actually, by the end of it, it was like, cool. Well, we have 3 days here, 2 days here, 3 days here, 4 days here, and like we can't change that. So in some ways, it was strict, but that was the only aspect. It was like the dates we had to be in certain places was strict. Aside from that, it was just utter chaos. And really, we just rolled as much as possible and just captured all of that. So
yeah, well, I think one of the reasons I bring up Spitting in the Wind specifically, when we were just talking about the videos aren't necessarily just kind of tour videos anymore. It's not necessarily. Well, I mean, Spitting in the Wind, you're not smiling all the way through it. There, obviously, you're smiling through a lot of it and you're laughing at a lot of it, but some pretty savage stuff happened, right?
Yeah,
so like the van getting broken into and stuff. So
yeah, I mean, I legitimately cried. So.
Yeah, I wasn't far behind you the first time I watched it. It's brutal, man, and like I think, yeah, that side of it it adds to that the original thing of standing on the mountain and shouting at the moon and all that stuff. Like,
yeah,
that created the initial part of the culture. But I think where the culture has become even more real and even more enticing subsequently now is the fact that there is like this real element to it. You do show the savage bits that happen, and savage things do happen. Like vans get broken into, savage bales happen, like the one at Woodward.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, there's I think that for me is what kind of keeps me kind of like you say, people smell the bullshit. People we're always going to eventually tire of that kind of,
and any trend can't last, if you know what I mean. So like the standing on the mountain thing, it looks amazing, but if we were still making videos like that in that same format now, like, because at the end of the day, yes, you might get up to an amazing view and go like, oh wow, and you might go like, woo, like that. But when the second you have to go, oh, do that. All right, no, a little bit to the left, get in front of the sun. You've ruined it. It's not a real moment. And so like that trend can only last so long, because now if kids are saying to their mates like, oh, do that, it's fake. And it's the same with a lot of like video trends. And I think they'll come and they'll go, but at the end of the day, capturing genuine stuff and just documenting that is the most genuine you can be.
Yeah.
So yeah,
definitely. It does feel like a very genuine kind of community now. There's a definite culture to parkour, and I think people that maybe had a similar journey to me kind of became aware of it, Jump London, Jump Britain days, and then it kind of disappeared for them. They didn't hear about it again. Well, in the meantime, parkour's kind of in the background building that community.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's exactly what it's done.
And now it's in a position where, like, I mean, look at some of the events that happen. Like, well, that's a good question for me to ask you. Where is parkour now? Like, what happened in those days where it was slightly more in the background? Where's it ended up? And where's it ended up for you?
It's so weird, because for me it didn't go anywhere. Like it just things just got bigger and bigger, and in some ways they got massive and then they got smaller again. And like, because with different, like Flow was a huge year, and like I was earning significant amounts of money and traveling the world, and it was like, oh, I've made it. And then the parkour events, yeah, like they, over that last kind of, I don't know when parkour events really started, but now you can't imagine a summer or even a year. Like it's so, this whole Corona thing's weird, because it's like, well, I don't know next time I'm going to go to an event, and there's some friends that I don't see until those events. But just this slowly, like jams turned into more than jams. They were kind of a weekender, and they'd be hosted in a location or a gym, because obviously gyms started to pop off. And now they're just an integral part. And then at like the competition thing has obviously come about, which, because comps used to be frowned. I mean, they used to be hated upon, and then slowly they built. There was the Barclaycard thing in 2009, and it kind of went away a little bit. And then we had Red Bull kind of starting to stick their fingers in, and that was frowned upon. And then slowly Red Bull became okay. And alongside that, you started to see more like grassroots gym comps and stuff like this. And those have like bubbled away. And now we have NAPC, which is, in my opinion, the most legitimate parkour competition. So yeah, it's, and also there's, I mean, so many other things, because more teams have come about, more sources of media. There's more careers in some way. Like people are sort of writing about parkour, they're photographing. They're taking photos of like the industry itself has grown. There's more brands. Like there are essentially more ways to make a living off of the sport, which at the end of the day is what a lot of people want to do. And we're so far from like everyone being set. And also, as the sport grows, not everybody can be set. Like you look at skateboarding, your chances of becoming a professional within skateboarding are made harder by the fact that there's a huge amount of people now doing skateboarding. Like you've got more people to compete with. But I think we're still on that upwards trajectory. As much as people go, oh, look at the Google trends of like people don't search parkour as much as they used to, and it's because everybody knows what parkour is now. Like you don't Google something that you know what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, definitely. And like you say, there's an identity to it now. There's a culture to it now.
Yeah.
And I think that gives it stability. That makes it more robust. It means it's. I mean, it isn't going anywhere anytime soon. Look at how much like investment there is in parkour these days in terms of brands, events, the work that's gone into videos. Like that, it is a thing now. It exists.
Exactly. Yeah. Like it's going to take a lot to squash it. And I know, like, I mean, rollerblading essentially got squashed whenever it was, sort of decade or two ago. I don't know the ins and outs of that, but I mean, I know essentially it went from being a big thing where people were making money to really like rollerblading's a fraction of what it used to be. But I think now that we have the internet and social media, I can't see that happening to parkour.
No, I don't
like
think
it's
so.
it's too accessible. It's too addictive. It's too easy to progress. And once you start progressing, then you get addicted because you just go, oh, well, that was satisfying. I want to do more of that.
Yeah, definitely. I've had just like a little tickle of that with the training that I've done, which has all been in gyms, in gymnastic gyms.
But the sickest thing is like you're essentially like, I don't know whether you're obsessed, but you love parkour. I mean, and you've and you haven't like, and you've only had a tickle of the movement, but you've become obsessed with the culture, which means we're doing something right.
Definitely. Yeah. And I think that's kind of, for me, that's part of why I wanted to do this conversation was to as you and I have kind of discussed in the background before, I want to help the sport. Like I am obsessed with it. It's pretty much at any point in time I'll be wearing an item of clothing from one of the brands. Like it's definitely a big part of my life. It's a big part of how I spend my kind of YouTube time, if you like. And I want to see the sport grow. Obviously, it's growing kind of organically, but I just want to do my bit, I guess, from the position that I'm in. Yeah, which I think, that a big part of that is kind of training yourself and getting to events and getting to jams and even just getting up the road to Exeter and seeing the guys up there, like kind of meeting people and kind of being a part of the community. But equally, especially kind of while we're in lockdown, I think, doing things like this, kind of just talking about the sport and making people aware of it and kind of and trying to change that perception from those really early days where kind of, not that I think it was taken negatively, but I think obviously you got the American Office and like there's various references and kind of things that are in people's head that give them maybe the wrong view on it. And I'm trying to say to people like, no, check it out, watch the videos. It is like it's categorically like cool.
Yeah, and I mean, also, not everyone is ever going to like it in the same way that not everyone skateboards. Like people appreciate it, but they also might be the same. Like somebody who might appreciate skateboarding might also still be the guy who's got a group of mates and they're walking past and they go, oh, do a kickflip. Like, they'll always like, we're only going to get so many people in the sport at sort of not one given time, but it's, I think it's just, sorry, I'm reading that comment. Like, yeah, exactly. Like it's not going anywhere. Like, and it's if you talk about it or if you show the media, more and more people are going to see it, and a fraction of those might get involved, and that's great. And if they don't, that's also great. Like it's chill. Like
I think it's a good thing to have these conversations and kind of try and get the sport out there and show people like what it is. But I think like you say, not everybody's going to kind of like it, not everybody's going to resonate with it. I mean, I'd challenge any kind of young English person to watch the spitting in the winds and the sort of trips like that and not get that feeling of like, oh my god, I want to go on a trip like that myself.
I mean, it's the comments where people are like, you guys are disgusting. I wouldn't be able to spend 2 minutes in a van with you and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, maybe you wouldn't. Like,
Yeah, fair enough.
maybe this is not for you.
Yeah, there's yeah, like I say, kind of the tours that we've done in the past, like as much as you can romanticize the idea of kind of jumping in the back of a van with your mates, I think after like the second and third week and everybody's stinking, people haven't showered for a few days, and you've been sat in the back of a van with the same 5, 6, 7 people for the whole time.
Yeah.
I can, yeah.
I mean, honestly, Sarah is a saint for dealing with, dealing with America and literally just a van full of teenage boys doing teenage boy things. Like,
Yeah.
and she just somehow takes it all and just puts up with it, which is unbelievable, honestly. Like some of this, because there's a lot of stuff that we couldn't put in those YouTube videos. So just awful things. But I mean, my life is so bizarre. Like I always sit and I think, and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like, where am I? Who am I with?
Yeah, I guess you find yourself kind of in different countries, different places, kind of more than your average Joe, I guess, because of the nature of the work that you do. So
Yeah, and I mean, like we just spent 3 weeks in Europe, and we literally did one touristy thing in that entire time because we had a day off at the end in Lisbon, and we were like, let's go and see this like nice area that we'd been told about. But apart from that, you're literally walking around with a group of lads who are just being themselves, and they're all just amazing characters, and finding walls down the back of alleys and random rooftops and like just areas that you would never ever need to go to. Like just the average person would never be like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go there. And you go there and you just jump off stuff and feel like when you actually boil it down to that, you're like, what is this?
yeah.
But I mean, we all just love it. It's so weird. Like it's so bizarre.
I think it does share a lot of kind of a lot of similarities with other sports kind of that are close to it, I guess. Like
Massively, yeah.
If you look at kind of skateboarding, for example, that's always the one that people use, isn't it, to kind of draw similarities. And I think,
Yeah,
I think for me to use that as a tool to kind of explain to people, like if you want to understand parkour and parkour culture and everything, like look at skateboarding. You can look at skateboarding and go, there is a culture there. There's a fashion sense there. There's magazines. There's brands. There's everything kind of there that makes it stand up by itself as a culture. And I think when I've used that example to people before, that's kind of allowed them to understand it as a kind of as a sort of framework of kind of what I'm talking about there.
Yeah, it's like almost every single parallel you can draw between parkour and skateboarding, and it's grown far quicker. It's not bigger, but it's jumped through the stages of progression far quicker thanks to YouTube and the internet. And I think where parkour will struggle and sort of where it sits at the moment is dependent on, I mean, we don't have, you don't have to buy a skateboard to do parkour. So you just need to buy a pair of trainers, but also like you don't have to buy parkour trainers. So it's like there's a lot of money in skateboarding because of hardware, which we don't have. So it's a bit harder for us to get money because essentially we're dealing with selling clothing, which is a subjective fashion thing. Like you don't need to buy parkour clothing to do parkour, whereas you need to buy a skateboard to skateboard. And then in turn, if you then become part of that culture, you will end up buying skate clothing in the same way that you'll end up buying parkour clothing. But I think that's where we will struggle because it's essentially getting the money within the community and within the culture to then enable these things to grow and enable the sport to grow. Like, so
yeah, that's kind of one thing that I was thinking we could kind of end the conversation on is kind of we've kind of discussed, I guess, where parkour came from, kind of where it's landed now, and I guess the next obvious question is kind of where do you see it going? Where do you want it going? What do you want to do with kind of your position that you're in? Obviously, just quickly before you kind of answer that one, I guess. Just to kind of recap, if anyone's just joining us, or if you're kind of not aware, so Giles runs a company and a brand called the Motus Projects, and that is, as much as we've been talking about kind of the culture and the movement and everything, the fashion side of it's a big thing as well, right? And obviously for the moment that's kind of your that's your kind of revenue stream, right? That's how you kind of keep a roof over your head.
yeah, essentially it's at the moment it's our only aside from the occasional job and things, it's the only kind of revenue stream. We're soon to release our first like video thing, which like a digital product, which we will sell, which I'm excited to do, and I think we need to be doing more of in the sport, because that is something we can sell. Like if the teams and Star have done it, and some other people have done it, like we can create something that is high value that people will pay money for, and it's not easier than making clothes, but it's a one time. You make it once, and then you can sell it over and over. It's digital. I think it's a good revenue stream for other people to look into, and that's definitely where we're gonna not push completely. We're not going to be churning these things out, but like we want to be doing more of them, because it's another one of these parallels that you can draw between skateboarding and BMX and stuff. Is like they've always made skate parts and they sell them, and it's like we don't make parkour parts and sell them, so why not?
So with those sort of things in mind, to kind of like maybe different ways of making money, different kind of different approaches to the sport. Where do you see the sport kind of going in the next, say, 10 years, for example?
I mean, I can't not see it going up. I think the whole gymnastics thing, because obviously there's the potential of it kind of certain people are trying to get it into the gymnastics and stuff, and that's very, very up in the air whether or not it looks like it's going to eventually happen, but it's like, well, what in what format will parkour be when it goes there, and how much will that then affect the course of things? Because you hear all these scary rumors about like, well, if that happens, then gyms might not be able to run parkour competitions in the format that they are, and there's a lot of speculation. Nobody really knows, but competition is going to be massive for parkour because it already is, and it's so like if you watch NAPC, it is just so undeniably impressive and true to the sport. Like you get the best athletes, you put them in a room, and it's like Street League or something. Like you take the best athletes, you give them the challenges, and they do their thing, and people love to watch it. And you have speed comps, and now people do head-to-head speed comps, which I imagine the 100-meter sprint but with obstacles. Like, so that's always going to be a massive draw. Competitions can obviously bring exterior funding. Sort of, there's loads of opportunities there. I think we need to be sort of not the parkour doesn't have to be about competition, but we shouldn't shy away from it. The fashion, I think, is going to really grow. I think what would be a massive sort of asset for the fashion side of things is like if we started to and it can only happen with time. Like this literally could take 5-10 years to develop, but if mainstream streetwear started to adopt parkour clothing in the same way that it adopted skateboarding clothing, then we're on a very good path. Because there's so many kids who wear a Thrasher hoodie or a Huff hoodie or like this kind of thing. Like they take skate brands and they wear it because it's just what they want to wear. And really that's, if we can get in that, then the revenue goes up. And if the revenue goes up, there's more athletes who can support their own living and do more with that.
So it's parkour as a business, as an industry that needs to grow to kind of allow the sport and the kind of culture side of it to grow, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, because the movement's always going to progress. Like in 10 years' time, the movement will be at an insane level. And thanks to things like gyms, we're already seeing it. And it's, I mean, yeah, like there's a kid called Ellis Torhul, I think, from Sweden, and he's young and he's just unbelievable. Like, utterly unbelievable. And he predominantly trains in a gym, and he is he wouldn't be that good if it wasn't for the fact that he's just been able to be in these gyms all the time. So the movement will undeniably progress, and it's whether or not we can kind of progress the business and all of these elements alongside it to sort of, it's a rising tide rises all boats, or whatever the phrase is. Like it's all got to kind of come up together, but I don't think there's one single thing that's going to be that change. I think that's why we will have to be pushing to like take it up.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited for the future of parkour. I'm excited for my journey kind of into it, as much as I've kind of sat on the outside of it, just kind of in awe of it for a long time, as you and I have kind of discussed.
I mean, I said it last time we spoke, like you're screwed now because you're you're too into it already.
Yeah,
Like you're not
yeah.
getting away.
I'm
So
heavily invested in merch. Like,
yeah.
there's a grand's worth of parkour clothes in this room. That at the very least, and kind of my kind of journey into the movement itself.
God, that makes me think about this room.
Yeah, well,
I got one-off customs and I've got samples and stuff in here.
I was going to ask, is that hat that's over your right shoulder, is that a Motus hat? Because that looks a different shape to the ones I know about. That's a very geeky question, but
That's a sample at the moment. It's a 5-panel. So
ooh, exciting stuff.
We're
There's a
doing
virtual pub exclusive.
Yeah, we're doing a couple of hats at the moment.
Nice.
I got many things floating around, but probably shouldn't show them all off.
So your next big release is kind of is coming soon, isn't it? And that's clothing and the video.
Clothing in the video, yeah. It's this. I can't complain about the Corona situation because people are dying, but like it's really made it difficult because we've now put this project is so overdue. We've put so much time into the video and the collection, and we've had delays at factories, and I mean there's and basically all these things, and we were meant to be shooting this ridiculous lookbook video and also lookbook photo collection, and now it's just like, well, I don't know what to do. Like, we need to shoot a photo lookbook in the next couple of weeks, and at the moment we're not really allowed to sort of go out and do anything. So yeah, at this stage I honestly don't know. Like, it's tricky, and it kind of breaks my heart because we've put so much into it now. I don't want to like half-ass it, but I think we just have to make do. I mean, this situation has thrown everyone into this unprecedented situation, and everyone's just got to make do and adapt to get through it.
Yeah, it's been interesting seeing you guys like the last couple of episodes on the Motus Projects YouTube channel,
scraping out weekly video.
Yeah, seeing that how you guys are kind of adapting to not being able to be in the same room or at the same spot or kind of anything together. It's been interesting. Do you think that's sustainable on that front, or do you think it'll break down more into the guys making the videos kind of individually?
I think really individually you get more style. Like that one, Max kind of opted to edit that one and kind of rushed it out within a day or so. And I think he's working on a part 2, but obviously the week before we had Johnston's video, which was like,
that was sick.
Beautiful. We're just pushing for weekly content because it's a proven formula and we want to keep the YouTube alive, and people obviously appreciate it. And I'd love the quality to be better, but also I'm not currently the one making the videos, so I can't complain if the guys are getting it out, it's sick. I'm all my energies at the moment just going into editing Soul Destroyer, which I cried to Keelan because we'd be dreaming of when we did Spitting in the Wind. It was a joint project. Like, I worked at this desk and he worked down here, and we sort of did it back in between ourselves. And that was the plan for this. And now suddenly it's all in my hands because he's at home, which I'm really enjoying. It's the first time in years that I fully enjoyed editing, but it's also daunting. Like, I'm excited because I'm putting everything I have into this edit. But it's kind of, it's tough at the same time. So
are you generally about the future of parkour? Would you say you're optimistic about the future of parkour?
I refuse to be pessimistic about the future of parkour because it's the only thing I have.
Yeah,
like
fair.
And also I'm now in a position where I can have somewhat of an influence in helping it. Like, it was an aspiration to even get to this stage, and now, because I like I said earlier, like, I just want to be able to say that I helped parkour, and I think, like, is it arrogant to say, like, I think I've had a hand in helping it.
Yeah, of course, that's fair to say.
And it's the only thing I have. Like, I literally don't have anything else. Like, I have 2 friends from school. Every other friend I have is from parkour. I have no interest in working outside of this sport, so I only can be optimistic about it because I have to be. And but also deep down I am optimistic about it, because some people are like, oh, it feels, you always see these comments like, oh, it feels like the culture's kind of died recently. And anytime I ever see someone make those comments, it's the people who themselves have faded away from parkour. It's never the people who are actually in it. Like, the people who are actually at the events and being active within the community never are saying these comments.
Yeah. And there's amazing things like coming through, like to highlight the the sorry, I've just completely lost it. What I'm thinking of is Jimmy the Giant's latest videos, like the bringing the culture to the forefront and saying to people, look, this is a thing. There is a culture
Yeah,
here, and kind of highlighting that.
he's doing such a good job. Like I've always loved making documentaries, and I've sort of tried my hand at my own type, even on Motus ones, like recently about events and things. But his style is so whatever the word is, for like outsiders to look at it, it's so appealing and easy to watch. It's digestible.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
I can't believe the quality of it, given that it's just one dude sat in his room, kind of
yeah,
putting these
yeah,
things
yeah, yeah.
together.
And he's
That's what,
churning that. I mean, he just sent me a load of music that he's working on, and it's like he's so multifaceted, whatever that word is.
yeah.
Um, it's sick. Like he's really, really sort of picked up some pace.
That's what made me kind of that. I guess that was my first kind of route into actually kind of having these conversations like I'm having with you now. As you know, I kind of I when Kieran kind of made that shift towards, oh, okay, I'm doing this now, I'm going to do these documentaries about the culture and stuff, like I watched them and I was just like, oh right, yeah, people making an effort to grow the sport is what's going to grow the sport, as opposed to just
like,
the sport sitting where it is and kind of continuing to do what it does.
yeah,
And that was kind of, that's what prompted me to knock that website up for him, kind of send it over and just be like, look, I've done this, if it's something you want to kind of work on. Then that started a conversation with him, and then obviously now speaking to you, it's kind of, that's where I can see myself coming into the sport and being valuable to the growth
because
of the
you
sport.
have value to bring. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, definitely. And I think people doing things like that, like kind of like the approach that I'm kind of coming in with, and like what Kieran Jimmy the Giant's doing with kind of showing it as a culture, showing it as something that has grown, is continuing to grow, and is inclusive and is expansionist. Like it wants to grow, it wants to become kind of even more than what it is.
Yeah,
That's what grows the sport. And I think the more the sport grows, the more opportunity there is ultimately for the athletes to come through, and kind of that dream that I guess the sport holds at the moment of being able to have professional athletes who are on a wage, that are kind of able to just be athletes and kind of create content and stuff. I think you can do more and more of that when the culture is kind of more and more established and there's more and more money in the sport.
exactly. Yeah, no, for sure.
I'm optimistic about it. I think it's awesome where it's at the moment. It's come from incredible roots, incredible kind of beginnings. It's grown into something that I find endlessly fascinating. And I think where it's at the moment is incredible. But I think 10 years time it can be kind of the next skateboarding kind of culturally, I think.
What I've noticed in the last few years definitely is that because a number of people have now kind of established a career and a living, like it's not just been a quick fluctuation of, oh, I had a good summer of a few jobs or whatever. There are people who are now kind of consistently living off of it. And I think the sport just has got to a level that the last few years, like the conversations, there just are, people are having a lot more conversations about how to keep it growing, rather than just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we did this, or imagine if it was like this. Now it really does feel like there's a very active conversation going on around people of like, cool, let's lift this thing. Which it seems so attainable because we can have these conversations with people on the other side of the world and we can collaborate so easily, whereas obviously things like skateboarding didn't have that when they were kind of at where we are in the sport. Like they were still the pre-internet. So that's, I think that's why I'm optimistic. Like it feels so attainable. It just needs collaboration, and thankfully we have the best community in the world. Like everyone is so receptive to that. So
yeah, definitely. I think it looks like from where I'm kind of looking at it, the sport has got its foundations now, and now it can be built. Well, it is being actively built on. If you kind of, I imagine it as a house, it's kind of the foundations are in, the footings are dug, the concrete's in the ground. You've got a solid foundation to build off of. That's the culture, and kind of now people are brick by brick kind of building this thing up, and it's becoming something that, like I say, I find it endlessly fascinating. I know I've shown it to, I mean, I ram it down people's throats. Really, some of the boys are sick of hearing of it. But I think that the initial kind of thing is that wow factor with kind of obviously the movement, but equally, like we've said, the culture, that kind of the tour videos, yes, play a big part in it. That kind of camaraderie, the kind of the trips and that type of thing. But I think all of the things we've kind of spoken about together kind of come together to create this thing that it's certainly not going anywhere, and I think it's going to grow to even bigger than it is now.
yeah, what's really interesting is it's the conversations when you start saying like, who's the Tony Hawk of parkour? And I mean, we used to think that Tim Sheaf was kind of going to be the Tony Hawk, i.e. the big main guy, because he had some crazy opportunities because he was so good at his sort of social networking, well, his networking and things. And it felt like he was like the figurehead representative of the sport. And he was like the famous guy because he had famous friends and things. But really, like, I think we're not even near, like, it's another generation or so before like that kid comes up and becomes the Tony Hawk. And it's a shame because I'd love to be sort of young when it's all big, when it's like really, really popping, and we've got like I don't know, because you look at like skateboarding documentaries and it's very nostalgic and it looks like those are the pinnacle peak times. But actually also as a business owner, in 10 years time, when I'm 40 and parkour's here and we have a Tony Hawk and there's tons of money coming in and maybe I sponsor that Tony Hawk, probably I'm in a better position than if I was a young kid. But if you know what I mean, like, but it's just like, yeah. Then we found out all along it was Jesse LaFleur. Well, that's the thing, is like Jesse became another guy that everyone was like, well, is he like it? You get these certain people who pop off in the community and you think maybe like they're going to be the one who like carries it in the same way that sort of a lot of the outside world has viewed Tony as this guy who like carried the sport forward. Because I probably only found out about skateboarding really through the Tony Hawk's video games. So there are these people who do certain things happen to them, and they take these actions and they take they'll take, I mean, Stora, like parkour was sort of at a level, and then the actions of Stora over the last few years have definitely, boom, like there's a huge audience who will equate their knowledge of parkour to Stora.
Well, that's literally me. I've literally found the scene through YouTube, and Stora's been a huge part of that. You've
and I don't even
the podcast quite a few times. Like I think one of the things that initially prompted me to speak to you was you talking on the podcast with Keelan saying, I wonder if there's people out there that have just seen Stora and kind of like, so therefore how much has Stora done for the growth of the sport? And it was kind of hearing those conversations. I mean, not necessarily exclusively Stora, but YouTube kind of, obviously Stora are a huge part of that. What, they nearly 6 million now subs on YouTube?
Yeah, I think so.
So yeah, they're reaching a huge audience. But that, like I say, that was the initial thing that prompted me to get in touch with you, was just to be like, yes, I'm one of those people. I found it through YouTube, and now I wear the clothes, I watch the videos. I'm
as much as like as successful as Stora are now, I don't think even they're the Tony Hawks, because you look at like OG skateboarding and there were all, I can't remember the teams, like the original teams who like Stacy Peralta was part of and people like this. Like, I think we're at that stage because they were in films and they were doing TV shows and stuff like this. And then skateboarding had a number of ups and downs before, and there was money in skateboarding back then, but like this was pre the Ollie. Like the Ollie hadn't even been invented. And I think parkour has progressed quicker because of the internet in the physical and even in the media. But I think in terms of where the culture and stuff, Zephyr, that's it. Yeah, the Zephyr team. And these guys just like surfed on boards, like skateboards. I think we're around that era still, maybe a little bit further forward than it. But like, I think we still got a long way to go before we have like that global sort of like, Dogtown, like the household names of parkour, I think. Because like my dad knows who Tony Hawk is, probably doesn't know anything about skateboarding. Like, I don't think we're there yet.
Not to be too niche with the references for people that maybe are kind of just hearing about the kind of wider sport that we're talking about now, but you've got to feel like Ed Scott's going to be a big part of that, don't you? Like his movement at the moment, man.
Yeah. And
he's obviously smashing competition, but like literally even in the last couple of weeks, some of the stuff that he's thrown down is just like,
he's like, cool, I'm just going to go out on my own and just chuck half him back out. Like,
yeah. And it's I think that for me is super inspiring, knowing that he's literally just up the road, 20 minutes up the road. And I was just starting to speak to Ed about kind of going up and kind of training with the kind of local community up there just before this whole thing happened. But
because like when we last spoke properly was literally the weekend before it all like kicked off. Because I chatted to you, and then that next week it all got serious.
I was
because you were going to go.
Yeah, I was in the office at that time, and I remember we were just starting to get the memos like through like under the office door, because our office is in a college locally.
Yeah.
And we were just starting to get the memos under the door saying like this coronavirus thing might be real. You might want to consider like how you're going to work through it and everything. Obviously, at that point, we had no idea it was going to be kind of like this. But
Yeah.
that was literally that day that we spoke when I was in the office. That was the day that I got the first thing through the door, and I almost laughed it off as like, huh, coronavirus. Like I don't know what it. I've not really heard of it, but you don't have pandemics these days. Those sort of things can't happen in a modern society.
Whoops. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. I think I mean, I could talk about this stuff all day long. There's loads of stuff that we've not kind of even touched on. I mean, the podcast is something that people I think should definitely check out. Super interesting. If I guess if you've enjoyed this conversation and you want to kind of go even more in deep with the culture and the kind of
literally just recorded an episode with Phil Doyle, who is, I mean, an undeniable kind of legend of the game, one of the best athletes ever to do it, and also an amazing character, which should be going up tonight. Or I mean, hopefully very, very soon. So if you want to go and check out the podcast, that will be a definite good episode to listen to.
How can people follow you, give you money, that type of thing?
I mean, if you search the Motus Projects, that is the brand, the website, everything else. I am Giles Motus on Instagram. I mean, we have a ton of sponsored athletes who you can find on the website, and they're all worth checking out. Somebody's saying street parrots, which is a ridiculous thing that's somehow grown.
That's a niche reference.
I know, it's so niche. Like, we did an episode about how to start a parkour brand, and I just off the cuff was like, oh, you could call it the Street Parrots. And now we keep talking about like making Street Parrots merch, and actually there's like this growing group of people who want Street Parrots merch.
Oh, talking of fake merch that's actually real. What's
Darwin?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to receiving my Darwin the Dog t-shirt.
I still haven't got my stuff because we did it all through drop shipping.
Okay.
Something I'd never done before. Because I mean, I'm not going to put tons of money into an April Fool's joke, if you know what I mean. So I had to basically create products that I didn't have to pay up front for.
I totally didn't clock that it was April the 1st. I just saw it and was just like, well,
oh, really?
I'm just going to buy it. Yeah. I mean, I sensed that it was a bit of it was a bit tongue in cheek, but I literally didn't clock the date until I think it was an Instagram story you put up that night going, this is mental. People are actually buying it.
Oh, wow. Jesus.
That's another one. This is niche as well. Sorry to interrupt, but this has been bugging me, and I keep forgetting to ask you about it when I'm speaking to you. You did at one point a run of like one-offs on the website that you sold, and
sample sale.
Yeah, that one. Yeah. Was there a T-shirt that literally just said the word "competent" on it, which is kind of one of your old?
And we sold it for £100.
Okay, yeah, I did. I remember.
It full on joke. I sent him so much extra stuff, like over 100 quid's worth of free stuff, because I felt so bad. Like, so I used to do this YouTube show called Giles Compiles, where I just did like a weekly roundup of the best parkour videos, and I kept using the word competent to the point where people got so obsessed with me using it that like it became this dumb thing. And then I had a bit of a break of the show, and then when I came back, I'd made like a cheap T-shirt that just said competent. And yeah, I think I made 2 of them, and I sold in this sample sale. I found it when I was digging through like old samples. So we put it on there. I was like, I'll do it for 100 quid. No one's going to buy it. And some kid actually bought it. So
I like the niche one-off stuff. Did you see the broom and you know the Stora like assault vest type thing that they've done?
Yeah.
I mean, that's broom ones they did.
Jack made.
I've got one in my wardrobe. Stuff. It doesn't fit me at all, but I've just got it just as like a nice piece of like.
I have
parkour
so
culture.
much stuff that I am preserving. Like I've got like merm shorts that I've never opened, and loads of stuff that I want to get like framed and preserved, because I just want to have this like it's in my retirement fund basically to start flogging it off when I'm old.
Yeah. I wore one of our old band T-shirts on the stream the other day, and it's one that I've kept like just brand new. I've just kept it in a box, and I've never worn it. And I thought, well, if I'm not going out and I'm not kind of gonna like ruin it, I thought I might as well just wear it for one night. There's loads of people in the comments just going, "Is that an old chick rides tee?" Like, I like that kind of to have like a token of culture. I like that stuff. It's cool.
Yeah, like I've got like a pair of shoes that Jesse LaFleur left at my house that he'd competed in our emotion in, and like all these dumb things that I'm like, it has sentimental value to me, but also I think like it's a cool thing. Like, I mean, I have dreams of just having one day a large gym and an office within that has like, you can walk in and you can kind of have this like personal collection of parkour culture.
Yeah, nice.
That's what I would love. Like, if I had more wall space here, I'd have more stuff up. But yeah, one day I want to display all this stuff, some like
It's
parkour Hall of Fame,
yeah, it's like having the football from the World
Premier
Cup
League,
kind
or
of.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
exactly, yeah.
yeah. That's cool. Yeah, nice. Right, like I say, we could natter on this topic
Yeah, we've
forever, but
overrun.
I yeah, massively thank you for your time, man. I think it's been super interesting, and I think it's done my intention, which is just to kind of like, I know that I've got a little kind of mini culture growing here, and there's people that know of my kind of obsession with with the sport, and it's kind of I just wanted to kind of bring you on and kind of, yeah, exactly what we've done, talk about what you've done, but also kind of expose the sport maybe to a few more people.
Yeah.
I'd highly encourage people to obviously check out the Motus Projects on YouTube, check out the Motus Podcast if you want to go in deep with some more kind of the culture and the kind of well, it's unapologetically for the community, isn't it? So it's
Yeah,
not necessarily going to be like
based,
this,
but
like a watered down version, a kind of intro to it. It's like if you go in on that, you're going to be hearing like the niche stuff. But
we literally, like in this one, we have Phil talking about how like landing on rails. So it's quite niche, but
yeah, but it's
yeah.
interesting. I think it's interesting in that you guys talk very well together, but you also kind of you veer off away from the parkour topic at times and start chatting about music and kind of various other things. So I wouldn't say that anybody should shy away from listening to it. It's definitely an interesting one, even if you're not kind of in the community. And then equally, just jump on YouTube and jump on Instagram and have a look at where parkour is these days, because chances are it's not what you remember it as from kind of back in the day if you haven't heard of it in a few years. And yeah, dig into the content. There's some amazing stuff out there. There's some amazing kind of long form video content which is kind of just as entertaining in my eyes, to in fact more entertaining, because it's more relatable. It's kind of
Spin in the Wind, I think, is a good intro to like Motus and ridiculousness. It's not too serious. Diego's just nailed some of the other podcast topics there. Thank you, Diego.
Yeah,
that's what we talk about a lot, unfortunately.
Yeah, they usually come in within the first kind of 30 seconds, don't they?
Yeah, not sure why.
Yeah, Spitting in the Wind's definitely one that I think people should check out. The other lads that I run this with, we call ourselves the Pub Landlords. There's 5 of us.
Oh, amazing.
I put it into the group this morning and said, boys, like, have a look at this stuff. Just if I wasn't sure who was going to be involved with the chat, so I said, like, this is a good way to kind of like bring yourself up to speed with where it's at. And all of the boys were like, this is incredible. Like the editing work, the vibe of it, the kind of the camaraderie, all the stuff we've touched on today. I think it really kind of exemplifies where parkour's at these days. And I think, yeah, I'd encourage people to check it out and see where the sport is.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Cool. Right, thank you so much for your time, man. I'm gonna we'll do a fake goodbye and then I'll end the stream and I'll speak to you again in a second.
Yeah, all right. Well, thank you all for listening, whoever's there.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you've enjoyed this one, give us a little comment down below, share it on your feed, and do all of that nice stuff. We're going to be back tonight at 8 o'clock with some incredible live music. We've got Rue on tonight, and she is... it's not Giles, don't worry.
Pulled out my headphones to do that.
We've got Rue on later, and she's an incredible kind of jazzy, like Winehouse type vocals, but kind of like the chords that she builds it all off of is like super jazzy, super awesome. So yeah, check us out tonight. For now, thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. We will see you 8 o'clock tonight. Peace.
Bye.